In the year 2154, the world is now under the network of 9 corporations who took control of the planet after a catastrophe destroyed the Earth and killed around 9 billion people 25 years ago. Only a handful of elites now own everything. Hunger and poverty are spread all around the world. The remaining inhabitants are divided into slaves and spectators. The network organizes a game called Ruitet, the Game of Redemption, where 10 players are abducted and brainwashed before they are dropped into a dark and narrow maze called Andron. The game is streamed to viewers all over the world through nano cameras attached to the retina of the players. Slaves are forced to place a bet on one of the players whom they think is likely to win. If the player wins, the slave is set free, but if the player dies in the game, the slave also meets the same fate in the outside world. These were the rules placed by the elite. The game is supervised by a ruthless businessman named Adam, who manipulates the game to make sure only one contestant, whom he has already chosen, survives. Meanwhile, Chancellor Gordon ensures the interest of the network is kept as the game proceeds. The game starts with a woman named Eleanor, who just woke up with no memories whatsoever. She begins to navigate her surroundings. She sees a strange symbol, and she finds out it has blood on it. Scared, she runs away, only to bump into another woman, Valerie, who tells her the same story about having no memories. While they were asking about the identity of one another, they saw a woman dressed in white that appeared like a ghost. Spooked by these events, they run into some sort of control room. In that room, they meet the other 2 players, Luke and Alexander, who also don't know their names and identities. They reveal to the 2 women that they have been all alone for a while, and they are the first people they have seen in days. They don't trust each other, and everyone looks at each other with suspicion. The women tell the woman about seeing a woman dressed in white. Alexander goes out to check it out. He couldn't see anyone, but the woman dressed in white is seen going past him without any noise. On the other part of the maze, 3 people have already woken up and started to navigate the maze. The 3 people were June, Christoph, and Julian. They have the same memory loss, but their groups seem to have adjusted to the fact that they have to work together if they are going to survive. They found a couple of flashlights and began canvassing the maze. They realized the maze is some warehouse with different machines. Alexander, on the other hand, sees the partition of the maze close. Eleanor sees a symbol similar to the one she saw when she woke up, but before she says anything, Alexander, who freaked out by what he saw, comes back to his group and asks them to leave the place. They go up the stairs to find a room with lockers, and inside are 2 other players, Anita and Fly. Anita is lying on the ground while Fly is acting like a crazy guy. When Fly comes down and rests, the group decides to go and get Anita. After they go inside, Fly wakes up and attacks them. He beats the 2 men up, but Valerie knocks him out using a steel pole. They restrain him and tend to Anita, who seems to be unconscious. Julian's group, however, is faced with another threat. After entering another wide room, they find someone covered in a hoodie beating up another person. They quickly rush to escape the scary person and enter another room after struggling to open it the first time. Adam, on the other hand, is seen enjoying this cat and mouse chase. Anita is now conscious and she can now speak. She also has the same story as the rest of the group. She tells them they all have selective amnesia since all of them haven't forgotten their basic functions. After she gets a change of clothes, Anita, Alexander, and Valerie go to find a way out while Eleanor and Luke look after Fly, who is now conscious. Luke, who was angry at Fly for attacking them, was about to strike with a metal, but Eleanor stopped him, telling him that he might know something. Meanwhile, Alexander and Valerie discovered the strange symbol again. While they were staring at it, Anita was separated from her group by a partition. The woman in white appears and chases her into another room. Alexander and Valerie went after her, trying to find another way to get to her, but they also ended up in another room. Julian, Christoph, and June get out of hiding and start walking to find some exit. But the person in a hoodie comes from behind and starts chasing them. Christoph and June run separately from Christoph and June. They hide behind a wall while the person in a hoodie is looking for them through a window. June tries to move to another hiding location, but Christoph holds her mouth and suffocates her to death. He then runs away through some hall. Meanwhile, Alexander and Valerie are back in the room where Fly was tied up, and they tell the rest of their group what happened. In the middle of their conversation, Christoph and Julian enter their room, and these groups of people they have seen before. Christoph lies when Julian asks him about June. Suddenly, the person in a hoodie enters the room and scares them, but she reveals her mask mask and takes her hoodie off. She was another contender named Gabriella, who claims to have been inside the game and hasn't seen anyone since. Kristoff tries to attack Gabriella, stating she has something to do with the disappearance of the girl, but Alexander calms everyone down, and they try to have a conversation. While Gabriella is explaining what happened to her, Fly surprises everyone by saying he remembers her. This was unexpected for everyone, including Adam, who didn't expect any of them to remember anything. He quickly changes the setting of the game. A partition divides the room into two and separates Eleanor, Julian, and Fly from the rest of the group. Julian cuts Fly's restraint, and they quickly get out of the room before their section of the partition is closed. Meanwhile, Alexander and the group are confronted by the woman in a white dress. She appears in the window, but Gabriella throws a chair at the window and breaks it, allowing almost all the group to escape. Luke, being the last one to leave the room, was almost out of the room when the partition suddenly caved in and crushed him, killing him instantly. After this incident, the rest of the group left, and Adam is then seen praising the action of the women in white, who suddenly appeared out of an invisible cloth. She was some sort of artificial intelligence that responds to Adam's command, and she was also the one who killed Luke. Julian, Eleanor, and Fly are on the move. Julian asks Fly where Fly remembers seeing Gabriella, but Fly tells him he is not sure, and it is just some feeling. Julian notices the strange symbol and stays behind to view it closer. He puts his arm inside the symbol and something three-dimensionally prints a laser gun on his arm, and the symbol opens into a passage. Meanwhile, Eleanor and Fly are walking towards an unauthorized area they are not supposed to access. They were suddenly attacked by armed men. Fly put up a good fight, but was outnumbered. While the armed men were on top of him, Julian used his new laser-printed machine to release an electric charge and neutralize them. He then leads Julian and Fly through the new passage. Alexander, Valerie, and Kristoff have sat in some room and begin to notice a strange symbol on their body. They all have different tattoos on the back of their neck. After seeing their curiosity about the tattoo, Adam triggers their memories to give them something to think about. Julian, Eleanor, and Fly have also taken a rest. Julian has gotten suspicious about the program from the way the armed men attacked them. He suspects the men were waiting for them and tries to search for cameras and microphones. But he didn't find anything. Adam's triggers have begun taking effect, and both Fly and Eleanor remember something. Adam remembers being a soldier and having fought in the siege of Malta in 1565, while Eleanor remembers her last memory to be on June 25 in the year 2154. Julian doesn't believe both of them. Instead, he argues that the present year is 2016. Eleanor was correct. She was the one that accurately remembered their timeline. This was unexpected for Adam. He quickly calls his assistant, Adora, to tell her that a neural anomaly is present and orders her to find out about it. The next scene takes us away from the game. Chancellor Gordon is seen in a conversation with a slave serving him drinks. The Chancellor has a special interest in this girl. This was unusual for a person in his position, since elites don't interact with slaves. Back at the maze, Anita, who is now chained to a medal, is being tortured and interrogated by Adam. It is revealed that Anita used to work for the network and she was in charge of security. Adam asks her how she tampered with the system. He believes that she was the one behind the mixed up memories of the contestants. She refuses to answer, and he orders the armed men, who are the same men that attacked Eleanor and Fly, to continue torturing her. Alexander and his group arrive at a room with a strange symbol on the wall. They try to match it to anyone among themselves, but their tattoo symbol was not a match to the symbol. While they were talking about this, Gabriella's memory is triggered and she remembers her past correctly. She even remembers the correct timeline of the destruction of the world. In her past life, Gabriella was a network police. She did everything she could to survive. She perfectly describes the destruction of the world, the network of the 9 corporations, and everything to the group. When Valerie asks her what year it was, she tells them it was the year 2154. But Kristoff, who looks at her suspiciously after knowing she's a cop, doesn't agree with her. Alexander manages to find a match to the symbol on the wall from the plastic papers. He shows it to Gabriella, and it was a match to her symbol. She puts her hand inside the symbol on the wall, and it opens to another room. Gabriella walks into the room, while the rest of the group wonders about what is in there. Gabriella comes back out with an assault rifle. Adam and the Chancellor are happy with this outcome, as more slaves start to bet on the former police. Eleanor wakes up from a nightmare, which could also be a memory. Then choosing to forget about it, she gets her group moving. On their journey, she gets caught up in a memory similar to her nightmare, which results in separating her from her group. Meanwhile, Julian and Fly continue their journey. They briefly saw the other team led by Gabriella, but before they could speak anymore, they were attacked by the same armed men. This time, the attack was different. The woman dressed in white was with the attackers. A fight breaks out and Gabriella can hit some men, but she gets separated from her group. Alexander, Kirstoff, and Valerie escape through a large hole Gabriella made while she tried to hit the woman dressed in white. The men tried to follow them, but the feed was interrupted after it was reported that they went out of the grid. Julian and Fly moved around quickly, fighting the armed men on their way. They run into Eleanor, who has no idea of what just happened. They travel across some rooms, only to get back to Gabriella, who is now overrun by the armed men. Before the woman in white disables her, she blows up a gas tank, and an explosion occurs. Eleanor and her group made it out before the explosion reached them. This event was a serious blow to Adam's reputation. After the explosion, the feed to the whole world is interrupted. As a result, Chancellor Gordon visits him. Adam tries to explain the situation by describing the event as a temporary setback, but the Chancellor gives him a warning by telling him that failure at this stage will have a dire consequence. Adam promises to get the game back on track, stating that he still has a few cards up his sleeve. Shortly after the Chancellor's visit, Adora manages to restore the feed, which shows Eleanor and her group. Adam tells her to bring the Commander into the game. Meanwhile, the Chancellor is back at his home, and he is furious with the slave girl after he finds out that she has placed a bet without his knowledge. She doesn't tell him who she placed her bet on, but the Chancellor tells her they will talk later after expressing that something urgent has come up. In an off-grid place where the system doesn't track anything, Anita, who was trying to convince the armed forces to come to her side, is rescued by Alexander, Kristoff, and Valerie. They easily eliminate the threat and free her. They told her they heard her voice through some ducts. Anita removes her restraint and shows them the tunnel where their conditioning happened. During one player's conditioning, his old memories are removed and new ones from different timelines are inserted. Being a former member of the network, she was able to tap into the system's conditioning, which meant there might be a way for the players to get back their memories. She uploaded a virus that corrupted the game's database, which caused some players like Eleanor to access their real memory. Anita then explains everything about the place they are in. She told them the name of the game, Andron, the quest for the contenders. She told them the players are all slaves and they volunteered to get their freedom and the freedom of the ones they care about. The rule of the game stated that a winner could select 3 other slaves he could free. Anita also confesses that she knew Gabriella and Fly. Anita was the head of the medical division when she met Gabriella, who had opened an investigation on Adam for manipulating the game by choosing who lives and dies. Anita, Gabriella, and Fly were on the way to stopping until Adam stopped them. He wiped their memories and put them back in the game. Fly was the winner last year. He came back to get revenge on the network that killed his entire family. Double conditioning caused brain trauma, which was the reason for attacking the group the first time. Meanwhile, Adam has managed to get files on the Chancellor with the help of the slave girl. She betrayed the Chancellor because the network had her family killed. In return for helping him retrieve the files, Adam helped her to bet on the winning contestant. Back in the game, Anita has devised a plan to stay off the grid and get out of the maze. She first destabilizes the conditioner by throwing a metal rod, which causes a massive surge of electricity through the maze. Then she tells the group she plans on using the files on her neurochip to expose the treachery of Adam. She reveals to them the network was behind the catastrophe that destroyed the world. The group agrees with her and they decide to help her get the information out to the world. But Anita warns them about getting attacked on the way out since they will eventually appear on the grid. As soon as they crossed into the grid, they met with Eleanor, Julian, and Fly. Ever since the burst of electricity passed through the maze, Fly has started to remember things. This time, he immediately recognizes Anita as a doctor. Anita encourages this event and keeps leading the group. Adam, who had already plans for the group, sends his first wave of attack on the group. Julian, Kristoff, and Fly fight well and defeat this group relatively easily, and they continue their journey. Next, they face the Commander. The Commander was a strong adversary. He was different from the attackers. Every punch he threw contained some sort of red beam. He nearly beats all 3 men and defeats them, But later, Alexander subdues him with his amazing karate skills. Suddenly, Kristoff surprises everyone by showing his true color. He ruthlessly snaps the neck of Fly, causing a lot of people who bet on him to die. Then he attacks Alexander. After fighting him for a while, he threw him through a window. Julian, who has found Jun's body, discovers that she was murdered by Kristoff and joins the fight. While the men were fighting, the women found another symbol on the wall. This time, the symbol matched with Valerie's tattoo. She inserts her hand into the symbol and retrieves an assault rifle. Just before Kristoff is about to kill Julian, Valerie shoots and kills him with a single shot, and the commander, who was back to attack the group, is finally put down by Alexander, and the group makes it out. But the place wasn't what Anita expected. After seeing what happened, the Chancellor orders Adam to surrender himself to the police. But Adam had still one card to play. The group is betrayed by Eleanor, who reveals the woman in the white dress to be her sister. She was an artificial intelligence like her sister. She kills Anita, blasting her from behind, and electrocutes Julian. Eleanor is almost unstoppable, but Valerie anticipates her movement and destroys her by using Julian's laser-printed machine. In the end, Adam came out as a winner by placing all the blame on the Chancellor using the files from the slave girl. Alexander and Valerie make it out alive, but not completely out of Adam's reach. The movie ends with Julian awakening from the electric shock.